Valve. What has it been? 14 years since Half-Life 2 came out? Something like that. Half-Life 3? Not in my lifetime. Hey everyone, Joe Von D here. And today we're going to add the gravity gun to our first-person shooter character. And look! It's our first-person shooter sci-fi project. Back from the dead. But in all seriousness, for this tutorial, you don't have to have our sci-fi shooter tutorial series done. You can just use the regular first-person shooter template that comes with Unreal Engine 4. I'm just going to expand our sci-fi first-person shooter tutorial series since, some viewers might want that functionality added to the project. So what can we expect from this tutorial? Well, since the weapon itself is not its own blueprint, we're going to be adding all of the functionality to our player and its parent actor, the Master FPS character, in this project. If you're starting from a regular template, just add it to your one first-person shooter character blueprint thing, a majig that you got. As your game gets larger, you probably just want to have all the weapon functionality in one weapon blueprint and spawn that blueprint from your character and kind of access the functionality of that weapon that way. But we're not going to do that in this tutorial. You know what we say to that idea in this tutorial is...
Not today.
And if you're not familiar with the gravity gun from Half-Life, it's kind of like iconic. It's like the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda, or the battle rifle from Halo, or assault rifle from Halo, or the golden gun from GoldenEye. I'm kind of old for that one, I guess. So basically, the gravity gun just picks up some physics objects inside the level, holds them in a specific spot relative to your gun, and then you can just hurl them at enemies at like ridiculous speeds, and you can deal damage to those enemies, which I'll add to this project as well based on the velocity that the object was going. So we'll go ahead and do that. So right now when we play, we load into a level, and we have 3 different firing modes. We have the semi-automatic, burst mode, and automatic, which is this one's just so overpowered. It's ridiculous. So we're gonna want to add a 4th firing mode, and that's gonna be our gravity gun. So just pick up some things inside of the world, I guess. And we're going to add that functionality to our Master FPS character, since that's where like all our firing logic is. There we go. So we have our firing logic right here. If you're using the first-person template project, you probably have an event in that project that is also your firing logic, where you spawn your projectiles. You just kind of want to replace that logic with what we're about to do. And the first thing that we want to do to add a 4th firing mode is to add another enumerator to this enumeration, the fire mode's enumeration. So let's exit out of there, go to enums. We can open this up and add a new enumerator. We'll just call this gravity gun. I have all this crap on my keyboard, so I can't really type correctly. Let's give it a small description, like a weapon that picks up objects and hurls them at your foes. Classic video game description, isn't it? Cool, so now when we go back to our Master FPS character, you'll see that we have the new enumerator right here. And we have a whole new execute that we can do some new code off when we fire our weapon based on our current firing mode. Cool, so this is kind of a mess. We have a ton of logic in the way, and it's going to be kind of hard to add new scripting. So I'm just going to move this all the way over to the right so that we have all this space to add the gravity gun logic. It might be best to just turn these into macros. You can't really turn them into functions because they have delays, and functions, if you don't know, they can't have a delay in them. So might want to turn those into macros, but I'm just going to add all the gravity gun logic right here. And one thing that we're going to need to add to our character is something called a physics handle. Now, this is going to be a component that we're adding to our character, and this component comes with logic to be able to grab things and release things. So we can go ahead and do that right now by adding component, search for physics handle. and adding that right there. Now, we don't have to change any of the parameters for this physics handle. We just kind of need the logic that comes with it. So cool, we have that physics handle here, and we just need a way to get into this gravity gun firing mode. In our input graph, that's where we have setting our current firing mode here. I'm just gonna keyboard press number 4, keyboard event, and we can copy and paste this, but we're gonna set it to the new gravity gun enumerator that we added. I think our player character kind of has its own thing going on, so let's copy this, compile and save, and let's just add this to our player character as well, since they kind of override it so that they can update their widget. I'm lazy, so I'm just gonna add it right here. There we go. So we'll update our firing mode right here when we press 4, and then it's gonna update our HUD, which honestly we should probably do as well, so we can have it say the word gravity gun, and we need an image for this. I could probably get an image. Yeah, so I made an image in Photoshop. Let me go ahead and just add that to our project. I'll just add it to our textures folder. We can plop that right in there to import it. There it is. And we can select it. So gravity gun, or whatever texture you want to be using. I did make it, I made it a cube. Not this. I made it that a cube, not a cube, a square in resolution, so that it kind of matches the other firing modes. So now when we load the game, I can hit 4, and then I'm in my gravity gun mode. Bop, 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 bop. But when I hit fire my weapon, it doesn't do anything because our firing mode logic right here just kind of ends. Doesn't really do anything at all. So we want to set that up now. When we fire our gravity gun, what do we want to do? The easiest way to find out if we're aiming at something that simulates physics is to just do a quick line trace. And if you've never done line traces before, this is going to be a good introduction to them, because we are going to right click and search for line trace. If I can spell this keyboard, man. Okay, I'm just going to put this underneath the keyboard. Line trace by channel. There we go. Plug that into our gravity gun. Execute. Bam. So now this is going to create a line. But right now our line is starting at the center of the world and ending at the center of the world. So it's more like a dot. So we need to specify where to start this line and where to end this line. And when you think about it, we have 2 options on where to start this line. We can start it at the end of the gun. So we can go boom to wherever we want to shoot out, or we can choose the camera and wherever the camera is looking at. And you're just gonna have to trust me on this, but it feels better if you use the camera, because the player is directly in control of the camera, and wherever the player's looking, that's what they want to interact with. They don't know exactly where the gun's going to be looking at all times, especially since in our Sci-Fi FPS game mode or the first-person template, the gun's kind of out of view. It's like he's holding it like down by his hip. You don't really see where it's aiming, so you can't even really like correlate where he's looking, but you do know where you're looking at all times. So we're going to use the first-person camera, this component here, to find out where to start and end our line. So let's get a reference to the first-person camera. Just drag it out, and you can hold Control and drag it out, or you can just drag it out and select Get. And we're going to want to get its world location. World location. Plug that in. And we can start the line trace wherever this camera is, right? So when we start playing our game, our character is in the world. Oh, let's eject. So he's in the world. The camera is probably like right here, so that's where the line trace is going to begin. And where do we want to end it? Well, we want to end it where our camera is and where it's facing, but like in front of that. So let's get the camera's forward vector. And if you don't know what a forward vector is, it's basically like the direction that the camera is facing, or whatever is plugged into this target node here, whatever direction that's facing in. And you can use this for any component, or you can right click and get an actor's forward vector, so you can use it for any actor as well. If we click on the camera, you'll notice that this arrow isn't going exactly horizontally in the X direction. It is going in the forward vector of this camera right now. So that is the forward vector. Boom, just whatever direction it's looking in. So we're going to get this forward vector, and what do we want to do? We want to multiply it by an amount. And this amount is going to tell the engine, hey, this is how much forward from the position of the camera that I want to look. So let's multiply it by something like 500. So this is going to be 500 Unreal units in front of the camera, and Unreal uses centimeters, so it's going to be like 500 centimeters, 5 meters, around 15 feet. Yeah, to look in front of the camera. And we also want to get the world location of the camera and start this trace here. So let's do that and plug that in. So that's a lot of stuff plugged in to figure out where we're going to end the line trace. But basically it's like, hey, first person camera starts here, right? So we're going to get that position to start with, the world location of the camera, and then we're going to get the forward vector, so what direction it's looking from this location, and then we're going to move that 500 centimeters forward in this direction. Boom. So like probably way over here, to be honest. And if we want to test that out, we can draw the debug for duration. We can set the duration right here. We'll just have it be 5 seconds. Cool. It's a little messy, but we will just tidy it up a little bit. Cool. Now when we play, let's start the match. Hit 4, so we're on our gravity gun. Now we're going to see this line trace every time we click. Bloop, bloop, bloop. It's kind of hard to see since it's so thin, but it's starting wherever our gun is. And you know what? It might be easier if we're in gravity mode and I do this and then I pause and eject. Okay, cool. So wherever our camera is, that's right there, and then it ends 500 units in front of that. And it works whether we're looking forward or down. If I look down, and you're gonna see these little these little rectangle things whenever we hit something. So whenever we hit something, that's when we can do something off of the line trace with whatever we hit. Alright, so if we hit something with the line trace, we want to get a yes or no value if we hit something. So yes or no, did we hit something? If it's false, just leave it blank. We don't want to do anything to nothing that we hit. If we did hit something, so off the true path, we need to get some information about what we hit so we can break the hit result. And this is going to give us all the info we need about whatever we hit. Alright, so when we hit something, the first thing we need to do is know whether or not the thing we hit is simulating physics. Hit component. Off of the hit component, we're just going to drag off, and we're going to search for is simulating physics. This is going to give us a yes or no answer, a Boolean. So why don't we do another branch off that? Cool. Very nice. Oh man, the spaghetti's really getting on my nerves, so I'm gonna move it over here so we can make some more spaghetti. Cool. So now we know some information about what we hit. If we did hit something, we want to get our physics handle, and the physics handle has some logic built in that lets us grab it. So we can search for grab component at location with rotation. Very cool. So we can do that, and we want to leave the rotation at 0 so that the object doesn't like start rotating around when we grab it, as long as the pivot point of the object is correct, which you'll see it is not for a couple actors inside of the level. So what location do we want to grab the actor at, the object that we are shooting with this gravity gun? We want to grab it at whatever its pivot point is, so we can just get the hit component, get its world location, and we can grab it there. Bam. And now we want a boolean to be set. We want to know whether or not we are grabbing something at any given time. So we can create a boolean, and let's just call it let's call it like holding object. Why can't I spell? In fact, I'm gonna put a question mark at the end. Wow, the technology has come so far. Holding object, yes we are. Now we are grabbing something. Very cool. And this is where things take a left turn from our Sci-Fi FPS tutorial series, since we need to turn on start with tick enabled.
Dramatic reverb.
Now you and I, we both know that I hate tick, but for some things it's a necessary evil. And for this, we're gonna have to go down to the bottom of the event graph, get event tick. And on event tick, we're gonna wanna check to see if we are holding an object. Cool. All right, so now most of the time it's not gonna do anything on event tick. It's just gonna fail because we're not holding an object. But when we are holding an object, every frame we're gonna wanna get our physics handle, and we're gonna wanna set the target location to a new location. And where are we gonna wanna set that new location? Well, we can set it in a couple different places. We can set it to our spawn target location, or we can set it to our first person camera, which is probably a little bit better. So let's get our first person camera world location, kind of like how we did before. Let's get its forward vector, and let's multiply this by a float. And this needs to be a little far in front of us, so let's do like 140 centimeters. And we can add another vector. Now, if this is a little too high or a little too low for you, you can do an offset right here. So let's just do an offset of like 10. Now let's move it down a little. So let's do like -20 in the Z direction. So Z is up and down direction inside of the level, and we're gonna move it down from our camera's forward vector. So wherever our camera's looking, we're gonna move it down. So it's gonna be like offset by that. If that helps, me doing the robot hopefully helps a little bit. And then let's add these two positions together, and let's set that as our new location for our target. Very cool. Yay. All right, so we can test this out. Just don't do what I did over here. We have to specify which component we want to grab, and that component is the hit component. So a little embarrassing there. Don't forget to plug that in. You got to specify, hey, I'm grabbing this dude. Don't mess with me. Okay, so let's check to make sure our player has start with tick enabled set to true. Yes, they do. So now we can test this out. And let's play in our level. Ba-ba-da-ba. And we're grabbing something. Oh, yeah. And that thing kind of just follows wherever we move. We don't have a way to release it yet, so we'll have to do that next. But this is what happens when the position or the pivot of an object is incorrect. So we grab it, and it doesn't really rotate with our camera very well because its pivot is just terrible. There we go. It kind of just moves around its pivot point, but its pivot point is really weird. What needs to happen for this to work well is the pivot point needs to be in the center of the object. So that's what's happening with this cube. The pivot point's in the center of the object, and now it works really well. Let's go back to our master FPS character, and let's just like create some scripting for us to hurl the object at someone or something. We need to get a reference to our boolean holding object. Are we holding an object? That is the question. Let's plug our gravity gun logic into that so we can check that whenever we fire our weapon. If we're holding an object, we will shoot it. If we're not holding an object, then we'll do a line trace. And since you know what line traces are doing, we can turn off our debug so we won't see that little red line anymore. It's gonna look like the gravity gun is just picking stuff up like magic. Woo! Okay, so are we holding an object? If we're holding an object and we fire our gun, we want to get our physics handle and release the component. Yeah! Cool. And that will release whatever we are currently holding on to. And then we want to get the hit component. This is going to still be stored in memory, so we can add impulse to that component. Look at our spaghetti being all spaghettified. Cool. Gotta love a spaghetti. So what impulse are we going to want to give it? Well, we can do impulse based off of our first-person cameras, forward vector. Yeah, we can do the forward vector. I don't think we need the world position for this. And we can just multiply that by a float. And multiply it by something insane, like 5,000, to plug that into the impulse. So whatever direction our camera is looking in, we're just going to pulverize the component that we released, and we're gonna set velocity change here because this just changes its velocity just automatically. Otherwise, when we're adding an impulse, it factors in like its current momentum and its mass and its resistance to the impulse and all that. But this is just gonna hurl it across the stage willy-nilly. And then we need to set holding object to false, since we're no longer holding an object. Because if we don't set this to false, the next time we fire our weapon, we are gonna try to hurl the thing again, and that isn't correct. If we hurl something, the next time we fire our weapon, we want to shoot this trace so we can pick another thing up. Yeah. So can we hurl some stuff in the level? That's the question. Gravity gun mode. Let me pick this up. Whoop. And nice. Cool. Looks like it shoots something. Oh. Awesome. But we're not dealing damage yet. Why are we not dealing damage? Because we don't have any damage being dealt? That's not a real answer. Because we don't have any scripting right now for dealing damage based on enemies being hit. So let's go to our BP enemy, and in our capsule component, we do want to generate some hit events whenever something hits our capsule, because some stuff is going to be hitting our capsule. And off of that event hit inside of our enemy, thank you. We're going to want to get the other component and see if it's simulating physics, because if we like run into a wall with our enemy or something, if it's not simulating physics, then we don't really want to care. You know? Are we simulating physics? Or is the other object simulating physics? Yes, it is. Boom. Cool. Let's get that. Let's get the velocity of that component. Velocity. Get component velocity. And we can get the vector length of vector length of whatever that velocity was, so that we get like a raw value of like what's the raw speed, overall speed of this component when it hits our enemy. And then let's set like a threshold. Is that amount over what's a good threshold? Like maybe 1200. Check if it is. Bada boom, bada bing. All right, so when our enemy, this guy right here, he's sitting there, he's aiming his weapon, he's chilling, having a good time, but then he's hit by something. We're going to check to see if that something is simulating physics. If it is, we're going to check to see if that something was going faster than 1,200 velocity. Is there a different way to phrase that? If it's going really fast. And if it is going really fast, then let's apply some damage. Cool. And who's being damaged? Well, the enemy is, so we can just plug in... What? Not remove self. We can just plug in a reference to ourselves. Boom. Bam. Cool. But how much damage are we going to do? Let's get how fast we were going, and we can normalize that to a range. And if you don't know what normalizing is, it basically takes any range. So you give it a range of like 1, or I guess 0 and 10, right? 0 is going to be the bottom of that range. 10 is going to be the maximum of that range. And then it takes a value in. So let's say the value is like 5, right? So 5 is like directly in the middle of 0 and 10, and it'll pump out a value. It'll be like, hey, it's directly in the middle of the minimum range and the maximum range, so it's 0.5. For this, let's do like 500 for the minimum, and then the maximum is going to be like the max speed. So if it's going over the max speed here, it's just going to one-hit kill anyone in our level. And I guess like I don't know, like 1500 or something. That way it's possible for them to survive. Like if it's going 1300 here and then it hits you, and it won't quite one hit kill you. So that's a good, that's a good range, normalized range to start out with. You can tinker it. Maybe you want it to just one hit kill all your guys. In that case, you just set the max range really low. If it's lower than this threshold, it should just kill every single time whenever it applies damage. And one last step in this, because our projectiles technically fit this definition, but they're going to want to like destroy themselves as soon as they hit the enemies, so it's not going to want to like check its velocity and stuff as it's destroying itself. So let's cast to our master, or our BP master projectile here in the beginning to see if it is our master projectile doing all this nonsense. See if our master projectile hit this guy, and if it wasn't our master projectile, that's when we can do this. And I'm sure there's like a better way to figure out if it's our master projectile or not. But you know, we're getting a little further in the tutorial now, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on that. So let's back out of here and let's check to see if it's working. Let's pick up our cube, and our enemy is at full health, right? And I hit him, and it did some damage. Really sick. Cool. Let's try to pick it up again, and got him. Got him. Yeah, you suck, bro. You suck. Oh god. Oh no. Come on, man. I was just getting started, so maybe I do want this cube to one-hit kill these guys. Oh, it did that time. Seems like the cube kind of gained speed. Oh god, my aim is terrible. Come. Oh no! Seems like my aim is pretty terrible with this cube. It's wherever you're looking, right? So, headshot. Let's Oh, nice. Okay, I'm getting better. I'm getting better with this gravity gun. Wow. Okay, so the enemies, it looks like they can't easily see me when I'm using this gravity gun. And I like this way that we set up the gravity gun, because when I'm going upstairs, I can like lift the cube up so it's not stuck in front of me and I'm like, oh no, I can't move. I can just lift it up. So I know there's a guy over here. Wow, I can't really see him. Maybe I should lower this cube a little more. Nice. Snippety sniped. I love how we just like pulled his body towards us when we grabbed our cube. Okay. And our decals are not being applied to specific surfaces, so that's why our decals look a little weird right now. Oh god. Well, I'm gonna have to switch to a different firing mode. Oh god. Here we go. Pray for me. I'm gonna try to grab the cube. For the content! Oh! I got stuck on a rail. Oh man, I got straight railed right there. Straight bodied. And I love how the music ended perfectly also. Is there anything else we need to do? Yeah, honestly. So all the everything we did works, but it's too much spaghetti. It's too much. I'm just gonna plop all this down into a macro and hopefully not crash my freaking project. Jeez. Let's do all this and have an execute for the output. What do I want to call this? Fire burst. I'll just call the macro that. And we can grab all this for our automatic mode. Create a macro for that. So much neater. Oh, wow. Fire, automatic. Great. Let's plug that into the output. I just like having output nodes on my macros, just in case I ever want to do something after it happened. And since we just fire a single projectile off semi-automatic, I mean, I'm just gonna leave that. I'm just gonna leave that like that. Like that. Cool. Wow. Yeah, our gravity gun, all this can just be a macro, right? Right. Cool, that is our macro. Fire, gravity. Guess this can go to our output as well. Wow, so much neater. I can probably clear up so much space with this. Wow. Oh yeah. Look at that neatness. Looks so good. Yes. Let's write a comment box around event tick. If I can read that. Wow, I actually spelled stuff right for once. That's kind of amazing. Event tick. Cool. Great. And in our enemy, damage from physics objects. Cool. Can plug that into the comment box. Very nice. And that's about it. We have Half-Life 3, and the sun is gone. The sun's gone. It's nighttime now. Has the lighting changed? Oh, I've been sitting on my foot this whole time. I can't feel it. Don't forget to like the video, comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel. It definitely helps out. Like, I'm not even joking. The YouTube algorithm's like, hey, we don't want anyone to see your content because, you know, you're like a little channel. What do you got? Like 100 views on each video. Oh, look at me. I'm a little channel. No one wants to see your crap. But if you hit the thumbs up button, can you even see that? If you hit that thumbs up and you comment, YouTube is like, yo, people are interacting with your video. And especially if you watch all the way through. Like if you're watching this right now, I don't know what you're doing, but thank you. Thank you. YouTube's gonna be like, yo, people are watching your video all the way through. It must be a good video, dude, because that's like the main way I determine whether or not it's a good video. Like that's the only thing that I think about, apparently. It's the algorithm talking. That'll really help out the channel. Whether you watch it when you're going to bed or whether you watch it and pay close attention, algorithm doesn't know. Just throwing that out there. I'm here to help you think like a game developer, so hopefully you're here and paying attention on all that. But I always appreciate you being here. Even if you're not into Half-Life, not into gravity guns, at least you know how to do it now. And you know what each part of the equation's doing. That's kind of like, I'm going on a tangent now, but that's kind of like the most important part, is you know what each part of the equation is. You know, like, hey, how would I do that? Well, a physics handle kind of does that for me. I can just bop-a-da-boom, bada-beam. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble and all that. If you like this new format where I'm kind of, sort of, ish live, but I'm still editing it, so it's not like entirely live, let me know, you know? Hopefully you can still see the screen. I mean, this is the first time I'm really doing this here, so if you missed anything in Unreal because I clipped it wrong or whatever, let me know. What else do I say at the end of a video? Oh yeah. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for the next video on the channel. Stay tuned for the next video on the channel. Stay tuned for the next video on the channel. Stay tuned for the next video on the channel!